All right. The next presentation is from my former student.
Yes, yes. Okay.
Yeah, very nice to see him here in Langsit University.
It's my
Very.
pleasure.
You look so great. Yeah.
Okay.
So the presentation is on representations of the armed forces of Myanmar in news headlines, a case study of Myanmar coup d'etat in 2021, right?
Yes.
And our presenter is Mr. Witsanuphong Suksakhon. So yes, let's get started.
Thank you so much. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yep.
Okay, so here we go. So good afternoon, everyone. Okay, my name is Witsanuphong Suksakhon, and I'm a lecturer from the Department of English, College of Liberal Arts, Rangsit University. And today it is my pleasure to present my research paper entitled Representations of the Armed Forces of Myanmar in News Headline, a case study of Myanmar coup d'etat in 2021. Okay, so let's get started with the backgrounds of my research study. Well, as you might have known that newspapers have provided information about the event of the day to people for a long time, and they could influence the reader's perception and bring about changes in various aspects such as politics, culture, social issues, and even religions. And basically, the newspaper will be in the formats of the printed, right? But with the emergence of the online platform, newspapers have changed a lot in terms of the formats and styles of writing. So let's say that now today, not many people buy printed newspaper anymore because they could access to the new websites and then read the articles online anywhere, anytime that they want, using their mobile phone devices, right? And there are many numbers of new publishers online, and they have to compete with each other to draw attention from the readers. And one thing that they can do is to use the eye-catching headlines, everyone. And the headlines refer to types of text whose primary function is to summarize the whole story or the main point of the news article. And let's say it is the first thing that we're gonna see on the newspaper or in the website, right? And headline is also used to catch the reader's attention and lure them to open the newspaper and read the news article. So okay, so when writing the headline, the new writer may employ various techniques and styles to write the headline. And some of them might employ unusual grammar pattern. Some of them might select the words that are distinct or very interesting. Some of them might use a figurative device to write up the headlines. Okay, so let's say that in my study here, I would like to investigate the language used in the headline. But what headlines? Okay, the focus of my study will be the headlines regarding the Myanmar coup d'etat in 2021. So what happened? Let me provide you with some background, okay, of this incident. So back in 1948, after Myanmar gained independence from the British, okay, the country was ruled by the military. Okay, and they suffer a lot of internal problems, for example, the ethnic minority and things, okay? And then in 2015, okay, Aung San Suu Kyi and her NDL party won the election in the general election for the first time, okay? And people had hope that things would get better. However, it has been reported that, Aung San Suu Kyi and her NDL party failed to solve the internal problems, especially the ethnic minority. And also she also showed the negligence toward the foreign investor as well. And then in 2020, the general elections were held for the second time. And again, Aung San Suu Kyi and her NDL party won most seats, although the election was claimed to be flawed by the Human Rights Watch organization. Enraged by the defeat, military and its USDP party, under the leadership of Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, alleged Walter Floyd and staged a coup d'etat in February 2021. This coup d'etat led to the protests all over the country, and the military had responded to the protests in various aggressive ways. And it has been reported that more than 900 people died from this incident, and this incident alone attracted the world attention. many news publishers report about it. And that brings about the objectives of my research paper in the sense that I would like to investigate the representations of the armed forces of Myanmar in headlines. I want to see how the news writer represent them in the headlines. And also, if possible, I would like to explore the ideologies of the news writer reflected in the headline as well. Okay. So the theoretical framework that I use to conduct and analyze the headlines is the critical discourse analysis, or CDA. Well, according to Faircraft, the aim of the CDA is to analyze the linguistic elements in order to reveal connection between language, power, and ideology that are hidden from people. By doing CDA, we are going to see the transparent inequalities of power in terms of like gender, race, and ethnic minority. And this notion comes from the fact that the productions of discourse is shaped by the social factors. And at the same time, the discourse itself shape and reshape the thoughts and practice of the speech community. Okay, and when we talk about the social events or the incident happen, okay, in the discourse, for example, the groups of people and individuals involved in these social events will be called the social actors. And in the productions of the discourse producer can select to represent these social actors differently. Okay, the social actors could be included or excluded from the discourse. Okay, and when the social actors were included in the discourse, when Lewin suggests that there are many ways that the discourse producer can represent these social actors, and the representation strategies are listed here. Well, I'm not going into detail because due to the time limits. Okay, let me give you one example. All right, so for example, personalization and impersonalization. It means that the social actors could be represented using as a human being or as an abstract noun, for example, or functionalization and identification. The social actor could be represented using their roles or occupation, or represented through who they are, for example. And I will use these representation strategies, okay, as a framework to analyze how the Myanmar military was represented, all right? And apart from these representation strategies, I also conducted the transitivity analysis, okay? In brief, the transitivity analysis will help us to see who is the doer of the action, what kinds of process it is, and also who is the done to or the receiver of the action. Okay, so we're gonna see the relationship between social actors and also the process or the action that they have done. Okay, and for the process, again, Holiday and Matheson categorize or classify the process or the action into 6 types like this. Okay, we have material processes, mental processes, verbal processes, relational processes, behavioral processes, and existential processes. For example, the material processes are the word or the action related to the actions like when you do something like kill, when you shoot someone, when you kick someone, for example. Okay, verbal processes are, for example, when you say something, when you state something, when you mention something, just like that. Okay, all right. And by doing the transitivity analysis, we're going to see clearly, okay, or clearer, the representations of the Myanmar military in the headlines as well. Now, let me show you the methodologies of my research paper. The data that I used in my analysis were headlines of the news regarding the coup d'etat which took place in Myanmar in 2021. Okay, and these headlines were written in Thai and were gathered from a local Thai news website, thairat.com. And when I gathered the data here, I placed the keyword Pama or Myanmar in the search bar, and then all the news related to Myanmar will appear. And then I select only the headlines that are related to the Myanmar coup d'etat, okay, to be the data from my analysis. And the time period from which the headlines were collected was from March to April in 2021. Well, the total number of the collected headlines was 42, okay, and these 42 headlines were analyzed thoroughly. Well, since the data is quite a lot, so let me show you some of the interesting points, okay, from my research here. Well, from the analysis of the headlines, what I found is that, the headline writer mostly include the military, the Myanmar military in the headlines. which means that they mention the Myanmar military in the headline. So the headline writer surely want to emphasize the role and the involvement of the Myanmar military in the coup d'etat and also in the violent suppression of the protesters. And when representing the Myanmar military here, I found that in the majorities of the headlines, the writer tend to employ functionalization and collectivization to represent the Myanmar military here. As you can see in item 1 to 3 here, in item 1, the word Tahan, or in English soldier, was used. In item 2, เจ้าหน้าที่ Myanmar or Myanmar officers. In item 3, ตำรวจ or police was used. It is functionalization because, the social actor was represented using their role or the occupation. And the headline writer surely want to emphasize the role of the Myanmar divisions, right? Because these are military divisions, right? So the writer want to emphasize that these divisions are involved in the violent suppression of the protesters. And as you can see, these words, soldiers, officers, and police are in plurality form. Okay, they are plural. So it's mean that the writer doesn't want to, the writer didn't specify or mention or make reference towards any individual behind this brutal incident, but they tend to, but the writer tend to collectivize them, treat them as a whole, okay, soldiers, officers, and police, okay. And the concepts of collectivization also obvious in sample headlines when the word กองทัพพม่า or Myanmar army was used, okay. Again, the headline writers didn't make any reference towards any individuals, although we know who is, right, in the headline, but they tend to collectivize them as a whole using the word Myanmar army alone, like this. Okay, very interesting. And then apart from these headlines, I also found that this is quite interesting in the sense that, some headlines contain the use of impersonalization in a sense that, the writer did not make reference or mention the military, but the writer used the abstract noun, the word Myanmar, the name of the country instead, to represent, the Myanmar military here. Okay, as you can see here, Myanmar สังหารผู้ชุมนุม, Myanmar kill like protesters. Okay, the word Myanmar was used instead, or พม่าปล่อยนักโทษกว่า 600 คน Myanmar released like 600 prisoners, something like that. Okay, this could be interpreted in two ways. The first one is that the writer may not want to make a reference towards the military. Or it could be possible that, the writer may imply that right now, Myanmar, a country, was under control of the military, for example, okay? And not just this, okay, in a few headlines as well, I also found the use of exclusion in the sense that, the writer did not mention Myanmar military at all, okay? The Myanmar alone was left behind, and also the victim was put as a subject of the action, okay? And then it was written in the passive voice form. Okay, so from the results I presented here, as you can see, the Myanmar military was represented negatively, okay? And again, this negativity also accentuated by the use of from the analysis of transitivity, okay? It's increased the fact that, Myanmar military was represented negatively. As you can see, the military was represented as a doer of the negative action, suppress, okay, ปราบปราม ยิง shot, okay, and then ปะทะ confronted when the protesters were put as a subject, as an object of the action, okay, as the victims of this action, okay. And moreover, the negativity here also increased when the writer used the adverb and adjective like cold or brutal or ไร้ปราณี or mercilessly, okay, to modify the military here. Okay, so since we have no time left, let me make a conclusion here. Okay, well, the representations of the armed forces of Myanmar in the headlines here are mostly negative and involving violence and brutality. Well, each of the military divisions, soldier, officers, and things were mentioned as a doer of the action, and in the material process as well, no individual was referred to. And the representations of the armed forces of Myanmar here could create ideology, which may become reality perceived by people who read the news. And as Richardson said that the way persons were referred to in the media has a significant influence on how they are perceived by the society. Well, I think I finish this on time. So thank you so much for all the, all the participation. Thank you for all your attention as well. Thank you. All right, so questions and comments are welcome.
Okay, thank you very much.
Witsanuphong,
it's a great CDA paper. Wow, I'm
so
impressed. All right, so now let me invite questions from audience. Anybody would like to make suggestion or question? Yeah. I think it's an interesting paper, and well, I learned a lot from this paper as well. So
thank you so much. I really appreciate your comment.
Before I say anything, let's see if anybody have questions or suggestion that would add up. I mean, make it even better. Yeah.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yes, sure.
Yeah, Harshita from Unimap. This is a very interesting paper. Well done.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, but towards the end, you were talking about how the representations could actually become reality, for people who read it or who experience the way the headlines have been coined. I wonder if some comparison with headlines from other political backgrounds, if you like,
yes.
Would actually make a difference somewhat, because I think some kind of comparison would be good.
Oh, yes, sure. Yes,
I think so.
Yes, I also consider about that as well. So my data here might be a bit generalization. I mean, in the sense that I jump into conclusion that, okay, these could create realities, right? So yes, for further studies, I think I need to make a comparison and run more research to check whether, this is the concept ideas or ideologies that are, that is universal or not, for example.
Yeah,
yes, so
I think the part about the reality or creating reality is fine, but I think it's just looking at it from the perspective of other ideologies, other national ideologies, and see how they might differ, and seeing things from different ideologies.
Thank you so much for your suggestions.
That's one path that you can take to further your interest.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that would be, you should add it to your discussion, right? For the education and further study. Yeah, thank you from Professor Hashita. Yeah, yes. All right. Any more questions? So I think his study is an empirical study providing support for the CDA. Is there a particular framework that this would strongly provide support for?
Well, so far I just conducted this research based upon the representations proposed by the empirical researcher I just mentioned. So it's just a big, it is just a small scale. So I need to enlarge this a little bit, and see whether other framework would match. So far.
Okay. Yeah. So you have plenty of room for your future research. And that's good. Yeah. All right. Now, any more questions? Okay, if there is no more question, then I think, yes, thank you so much from Witsanuphong. It's great to be here. You are so professional.
It is nice to see you again, Kamajan. Thank you so much for your comments as well. Thank you. Let me stop sharing my screen. Yes.